let's talk about what I call the sleep-wake connection. So Eve Van Coulter, who's a researcher out of the University of Chicago, who's done some of the best research in the country, gave me this quote, which I thought was really quite interesting. She said, "There is rapidly accumulating evidence from both laboratory and epidemiologic studies to indicate that chronic partial sleep loss," right? So you just missing 30 minutes from your normal 6.5 hours, that's what she's talking about, may increase the risk of obesity and weight gain. And Ev has done some of the best studies in the country, but let's take a look at it. So why does too little sleep lead to weight gain? Well, number one, people who sleep less, they appear to take in more calories. When sleep deprived, there's actually an alteration in your glucose metabolism. And what I mean by that is, in fact, you slow down. Your metabolism slows down, right? And so when you're sleep deprived, your brain says, holy cow, I'm awake. I don't know why I'm awake, but I need to conserve my resources. I need to conserve the energy stores that I have in my body, so it slows that metabolism down. That can be a big issue because when your metabolism isn't functioning, you're not burning fuel, you're not burning fat, and it's starting to accumulate. The second thing is we know that there's actually what's called an upregulation of appetite. So what happens is your cortisol levels rise. Now, if you remember back from 10th grade biology, cortisol is the stress hormone, right? It's the fight or flight hormone. So what ends up happening is when your body gets into a state of stress or panic, it elevates with cortisol. Well, what does cortisol do? It makes you hungry. Why on earth would it make you have an increased appetite? Because your brain wants to bring in resources. It figures if I'm up, I must be up for some reason. So I'm going to slow down my metabolism, and I'm going to make myself want to eat more so I can get more fuel in case I got to get on the move. A couple of different studies that I thought were very, very interesting. And you don't have to remember all of it about this, but there are also actually two hormones that are very, very important in weight loss, which you've probably learned about through some of your education at BLR. But how does sleep affect them? Very interesting. So what we can see very consistently across the board is something called leptin, which is the stop hormone. This is the hormone that says, go ahead and stop eating. That has a tendency to decrease. So you'll notice here in the dark black, it gets negative. So you lose approximately between 15 and 20% of your leptin. And then there's this thing called ghrelin, which is the go hormone. This is the hormone that makes you want to eat. That actually increases by 20 to 25%. So just to back up, we have, with sleep deprivation, we have slow metabolism, we have high appetite due to high levels of cortisol. We have low leptin, which is what tells us to stop eating, and we have high ghrelin, which says go, 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 eat more, more. Right? So this is a recipe for weight gain and, quite frankly, disaster. So what else is going on? People who sleep less actually take in more calories. So this was a really interesting study. First of all, there's more time to take in calories because you're not sleeping, right? Because you can't eat while you sleep. Although there is a sleep eating disorder that's out there where people are actually eating food during sleep. But it's kind of bizarre. They don't seem to eat normal kinds of food. These are people, we find them in the ER because they've done things like eat raw chicken or a bag of flour or cigarette butts or something really gross. So I'm not talking about that. But what we do know is when you're awake and awake for longer periods of time, you definitely have a tendency to eat more calories, number one. And then also, your food choices have a tendency to change due to a need to increase something called serotonin. Now, if you remember, again, back from biology, serotonin is the calming hormone. It's the hormone that makes you feel much more relaxed. You know the easiest way to calm yourself down? Carbohydrates. It's very, very interesting, but ingesting carbohydrates causes that level of calm to come in by increasing your serotonin. That's why they call them comfort foods, right? Is because of this neuroanatomical basis of this increase in serotonin, which is actually quite fascinating. The more sleep deprived you are, the higher your cortisol. Well, your brain doesn't like that, so it wants to put serotonin on top of that to lower that cortisol level down, and it actually makes you crave high-fat, high-carbohydrate foods. As hunger increased in subjects, so this was a study that was done by Dr. Van Coulter in 2004, and what she discovered was, this is fascinating, right? After 2 nights of diminished sleep, not total sleep deprivation, but just less sleep than they normally had, volunteers found foods such as candy, cookies, and cake far more appealing than healthy choices, right? So when you start to think through this idea, if you're trying to lose weight and you're not looking at your level of sleep and your level of sleep deprivation, there's almost no way that you can succeed. So you really have to incorporate this as part of your weight loss routine, along with education, nutrition, exercise. Sleep should really be definitely part of that whole triumvirate. This was another quote from Ev that I thought was really interesting. She said, "We don't know yet why food choice would shift. Since the brain is fueled by glucose, we suspect it seeks simple carbohydrates when distressed by lack of sleep." So again, what's the mechanism we think is going on? That high level of cortisol, jump in with the serotonin to kind of calm it all down for everybody. This was a really interesting study back in 2009, and this had to do with snacking. And so when volunteers slept only 5.5 hours, they ate their normal amounts of food, not a problem, but their snack intake increased dramatically by almost 1,000 calories. And by the way, 65% of those calories were carbohydrates. And so guess what? It was also at night, which is the worst time to snack because you have no chance to work that food off. And guess what? You're going to start gaining weight again. So not only did people, and these were people who, by the way, on average were sleeping about 6.5 to 7 hours. So by losing about an hour of sleep, their snacking went up by almost 1,000 calories, with 65% of it being carbohydrates. So as you can see, it's not the place that we want people to be. So people who sleep less actually burn fewer calories. This was a very interesting study. Although the findings are not yet conclusive, we see that there is actually a reduction in energy expenditure. So believe it or not, like we were saying how your metabolism slows down, your ability to burn off food actually lowers with less sleep. Why? Again, your body is trying to hold on to those resources, which we really don't want it to do. If you're well rested, your body wants to get rid of those resources. And we know, as I was saying before, that REM sleep has a tendency to burn the most calories. So when you cut off the back end of your sleep by sleep depriving yourself, you miss out on that benefit as well. Again, this was an animal study. This looks at increased food intake. Again, remember, ghrelin is causing that, and decreased motor activity. So not only is the go hormone telling you to bring more food in, it's also telling you to lay on the couch, right? It's telling you to not move a whole lot. Now, you would imagine to yourself, how on earth would something like this occur? It's really, we don't know the whole mechanism yet, other than you're tired, right? You haven't slept well, and you're tired. So you have a decrease in motivation. We've actually seen in this 1998 study a decrease in physical activity. So not only do you have high appetite, low metabolism, high ghrelin, which is your go, and low leptin, which is your stop. Not only that, not only are we snacking more and craving more, but we're not willing to work it off. Our motivation for exercise just drops. And so again, this all falls into play nicely with all of the different techniques that are being used at the BLR resorts, because we know that all of those things are part of the program. And if you're not sleeping well, it's very hard to take advantage of it. This was another study. People who sleep less actually lose less fat. Now, this was really interesting. 10 overweight non-smoking adults, 3 women, 7 men, with an average age of 41 and a lean body mass index of 27. 14 days of moderate caloric restriction with either 8.5 hours of sleep or 5.5 hours of sleep. Okay? So here's what happened. When they dropped sleep, right, so sleep curtailment decreased the proportion of weight lost as fat by 55%. So when you're sleeping 8.5 hours, your body wants to burn fat. But when you're not sleeping 8.5 hours, your body doesn't. Again, holding on to those resources as tight as it possibly can. So lots of reasons why sleep has become a very important aspect.